Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review for Sword Art Online, episode 16. I really loved this episode because above and beyond, whereas the last episode was, filled with new things, seeing the real world of Kirito's life, Kitagaya, as he's called in the real world, meeting his cousin, seeing that there are villains, very much a legitimate threat like they were in SAO, the game, and seeing that Asuna is one of 300 people who are still being sort of contained within it, not allowed to escape. These were all new facets and new, sort of direction for the story and stuff like that. But I really felt like this episode was the first bold steps thrusting forward into a whole new chapter. It felt like a whole new show almost watching this episode. And while it's very familiar because it's still dealing with the same characters, it just felt like new ground, and I was really excited to see it. By the end of it, I'm definitely chomping at the bit to continue this whole new story. Now, let me preface my actual review of the episode by saying I'm somebody who noted many times, in the reviews up to this point, that there were scenes that would happen in episodes that seemed to be integral to the opening credits of the series, and I found that there was a lot of meaning in that. And so I'm kind of looking at this new set of opening credits, the new animation and the new music and stuff like that, and I'm really seeing a heavy presence of the sort of playing up of the relationship between Kirito and his cousin Suguru. Now, I don't know exactly how far this is going to go. I don't know, if they are actually meant to be in a sort of relationship, or if they're even going to recognize each other. As we see in this episode, it doesn't seem like they do. If what I'm led to believe is true, that she is in fact Alifa in the game, I don't know if that's absolutely the case or not. As I say, I haven't read the light novels, but it just seems very intriguing to me that Asuna is a very minimal presence in those opening credits, and it just really has me wondering, is that relationship between Kirito and Asuna really set in stone? Was it just something born out of SAO and is about to fizzle out? Is she really Lifa? I don't know. We see that Lifa in this episode is quite the swordswoman, so I don't know. It just seems very sort of misdirecting, misleading potentially, and I'm just going to have to wait and see how that plays out. For all I know, it could be a big mystery to unravel for both, Sugu and Kirito, if that is who they are in the game, to find out that's who they are, that kind of thing. It seems like they're probably going to be hanging out and sticking together, and I just wonder how far that's going to go. But in any case, getting to this episode, I love that we have Kirito going and following up with Egil. Egil, I love the fact that he is doing something very similar to what he did in SAO in the real world. He has a bar, a business of sorts, and basically that's kind of sort of what he was doing in SAO, although it was weapons and that kind of thing. But he was like a shop owner, and this is very fitting for him to be in the real world setting, kind of doing that same shtick. Now, I think it's hilarious that he's apprehensive, that, Kirito's basically excited as hell when he's hearing all this descriptions of ALO, this new game, Alphaheim Online, and Kirito almost let his excitement get to him. He's focusing on Asuna, but then all of a sudden this new harder core game is sounding fantastic to him, and he's just wanting to get into it as soon as possible. And Egil just clears his throat, and he's trying to get Kirito back on topic. We're talking about Asuna. And he basically outlines the whole story about how 5 people, there's this humongous tree in ALO, and these 5 people get together to try to, form a physical rocket to try to get to the top of this tree. It's untold territory in ALO. And of course they do fail, but as they are falling back sort of to the ground, they happen to spot what looks like a giant bird cage, and they take some shots of it. They zoom in, and sure enough, that's where the shot of Asuna comes from, or what looks to be Asuna. And that's just fascinating as hell to me because, we know that 300 people have been contained within this game, or at least they haven't woken up in the real world, and that makes me ask the question, are they being held within this singular bird cage, or is it each of these 300 people have a birdcage all to their own? So in a sense, they're not only trapped within ALO, but they're also trapped inside the trap. They can't even move around and explore the ALO world. And that is just a tragic fate, especially for Asuna and all these 300 people. So it definitely gets under Kirito's skin. He wants to jump right into this game and find out what's going on. Now, we have another little comical scene between he and his cousin that, again, touching base on what I said earlier, I think they're going to be playing up this relationship, and I don't know if this is meant to be the genuine relationship that takes over the series, and Asuna's kind of relegated to the background. Maybe it was her day in the sunshine in the SAO arc, but maybe that time is over. I don't know. I could be completely wrong with that. But essentially, Kirito jumps headfirst into this new game, and it's like new territory for him. He's figuring things out. He picks his character and stuff like that. He ends up, very interestingly, contemplating whether he wants to put his original name in, Kirito, that he had for SAO, but he doesn't. It's like he's making a grandiose statement by putting that name in, letting people be aware of that fact that, yes, I'm returning to this game world. And it's interesting that, something seems to go afoul. Rather than appearing in a town like he was told he would, something glitches and he ends up out in the woods somewhere. And of course, he's trying to figure things out. He goes through all of his skill sets, and they seem to be on par with what they were in SAO. And that's very intriguing because, of course, as we find out after the grand, awesome spectacle of him finding that Yui is still within his items list, and he brings her back to life, essentially, which I just loved. I mean, I was a little misty-eyed when, the realization on both of their faces, daddy, daughter, that kind of thing. It was awesome to see that reuniting in the show. But she basically goes on to explain that, yes, because it's similar servers, all your information has been brought over. And this also seems to be the case with all of his item data, but all of the items themselves have been gone. Yui basically warns him very intriguingly that he has to get rid of all that information because that could cause trouble if he's detected. And that also applies to his skill set because essentially they're carrying over from SAO. And if anybody notices that could cause lots of trouble. And he acknowledges this very interestingly by saying, no longer am I a beater, I'm a cheater. So I love that he has that realization, and he's still trying to figure out the new territory. Once the wings start up and he's trying to fly around, and he crashes on his head twice in one episode, just hilarious. But of course, the whole thing turns when we see he intervenes when these other players are detected in the area, and we have the bold sort of introduction of Leafa herself. She's fending off an attack from these soldiers. Essentially, they look like they were carried over from SAO. And I don't know if those are actually any of the players from SAO, but essentially you have her fending them off, and Kirito intervenes in bold fashion, taking them out. I love when he pulls a Heathcliff and, one of the guys tries to attack him, and he just grabs the tip of his, spear or whatever it is and holds him there, and then he just tosses him. I mean, totally a pimp move. And so basically, that's the end of this episode. And as I say, it's a bold first steps into a whole new chapter, the whole new chapter of ALO. And I really am fascinated to see the mysteries unravel. What is up with Asuna? Is she being contained in a birdcage by herself? And what is the meaning behind it? Lots of questions once again. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you think of it, what you think the story has in store, whether you know or not. Don't post anything that's too spoilery and stuff like that. But I love having the discussion about this series because it's just so fascinating. And it's amazing that, as I say, basically we're 16 episodes in, and it's still as fresh and intriguing as episode 1. So I'd love to hear from you as always, and otherwise that's going to be pretty much it for me. So I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you later. Peace.